Hey guys, I'm Sarah. I play a lot of Symmetra, and I've gotten a lot of questions in streams recently about how I choose what placements I use for turrets, why I put them in the places I do, and how I can sort of think about that. And so in today's video, I'm going to be going through sort of my rationale for using Symmetra on King's Row. And I mean, there are some obvious things that a lot of people do on King's Row. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those things and the trade-offs that I see, and then I'll get a little bit into how I use her a little bit more dynamically than just like the initial setup. And so like after the attack team like captures the payload, like what do we do? And we're on defense back there. I do think Symmetra can be used effectively with offense, but that's not like specifically the point of this video. But like a lot of the principles that I use when I'm thinking about turret placement really apply on attack as well. So so keep that in mind, I guess. So I guess let's get started. So the first thing I do when I play Symmetra, before her rework, I used to always put turrets like right here along the wall, on this side and on this side. And I would usually put them on this side first, because I feel like walking back across here is kind of dangerous when the attack team has come out of the door. So it's a lot easier to stay alive on this side, especially since I can go back into the lobby, the hotel lobby, for health. And so I can just like keep re-putting them up here as they get taken down in a hurry a lot more easily than I can over there. So I take advantage of the fact that like the game hasn't started yet to place them here on the left first. Having said that, now that like Symmetra has had her rework and she can put up turrets a lot more quickly, there is definitely the sort of commonly used strategy that you see of putting them like along here next to the doors. This is obviously a trade-off, because if they're like a dive comp and they're going to move out of spawn really fast, then you won't have time to actually set them up here. And so I really see it as taking a risk between building a lot of ult right at the beginning. You know, maybe you get 20 or 30 ult charge, 20-30% ult charge right at the beginning of the match, but that's like the trade-off for that is if they're going really fast and they move through, or like maybe they all go out the hotel window out here, then you don't really have time to set up turrets anywhere else before everybody on your team is frantically defending the point. So so sometimes I do that. I guess I don't really have an optimal way of thinking about that yet for how to make that call, whether you want to devote all your 6 turrets here. Sometimes what I'll do is just put a couple, like, some turrets over here around the door, but not all of them. Like, maybe I'll put 3 around the door here, or maybe I'll put 3, like, up here in this corner of the theater, to get a little bit of ult charge, but then I'll still have, like, my other 3 turrets placed here, in that spot, for the same reasons I said before, because like I won't be able to sustain in this position very long. So like maybe I would start out the match like this, and then hang out over here, and as soon as I see my turrets start getting knocked down one by one, I would start placing the other 3 here at the gate. And obviously for that, like these 3 could be at the door. If you are going to put turrets at the door, though, one thing that I think is really important is to make sure they aren't visible to the enemy team. Like, don't put it here, because they can just, like, see it while they're all waiting to spawn. And that's true, I think, right here, too. Obviously, I'm on the defense team, so I can't really go in, but, like, that looks like it's going to be pretty visible to me from right over there. So what you want to do is try to place them, like, far enough out that nobody can tell from outside. Like, the best case that they will know is maybe they've got, like, a Pharah standing up here who's calling out to the team, like, oh, there's a Symmetra, she's walking up to her door, and so they know, like, they're probably turrets somewhere. But you want your turrets to be completely invisible as people approach them. And, like, test it. Next time you're coming out of attack spawn, like, look around and see, like, what are the spots that I can't see? Like, if I'm standing here, I can't see around this corner, I can't see this one around this corner. I'm probably not looking above me, so like probably up there, excuse me, probably up there would be a pretty good place if you can get high enough, although that's still pretty visible, so really you want them up there. But so if you have like a friendly Mei who's going to help you, but that's like both audible and time consuming and visible to the enemy team, so probably, even though that would be a nice spot, it's probably not the best. So along similar lines, like, you want your turrets to be invisible as people are approaching them until they're getting shot. Like, as you walk across here, a really good place for a turret might be, like, up in here. I say this, I say might be because I haven't actually tried that one, but as people are walking by, does it have line of sight? That might not be the best place. But I think the principle that you're applying, or that you apply when you think about it, like a place like this, is the same, which is you want something that's just not visible. And that's one of the big appeals to me of putting turrets up here. Because as you walk through, you really don't see it, and you're like, crap, I'm getting shot from somewhere, but you don't know where your damage is coming from. Now, this is a place that I think has become more common over the last several months, so I don't know if I necessarily advocate it as a really good place at the start of the match for dedicating some of your turrets, because I feel like now people are getting to the place where they walk through here and they take damage, and they're like, bam, and they shoot it. So, so that's probably not the best one, but I think the underlying principle is still applying here. Obviously, you could put them in here or something. There are lots of little nooks and crannies where you could hide them in here where people aren't going to see because they'll be firing at them from behind. But like, you only have 6 turrets. You want to put them in the places that are going to be the most common places that enemies will be standing. So like putting a turret in there is really a waste. We'd be better off to just have it here at the gate than have one hidden in there, unless you have particular reason for thinking that that's a place that people are likely to be. So a lot of times I'll see Symmetras who put just like 1 or 2 turrets here and there, just in some random place that is obviously not like the likeliest place that enemies are going to pass by. And I feel like that's kind of suboptimally utilizing the damage that her turrets could be doing to the enemy team. And so, yeah. So another thing that I see a lot of Symmetras do pretty commonly is they'll put just like 1 turret here and there. Like, oh, here's one. Like, oh, here's a turret over here. And like, oh, it's a little bit of damage all over the map. But I don't think that's very effective because 1 turret doesn't damage you enough. And so, I mean, sure, it's nice to do damage, but kind of you're giving their healers just a bunch of ult charge there. And so, I feel like if you're going to put a little, like, pocket of turrets by itself somewhere, you want that pocket to have either 2 turrets that are really hard to take out quickly, which I'll go back to in a second, or you want to have turrets that are going to that are enough turrets to significantly damage and maybe kill them. So if I'm going to put like a little pocket of turrets by themselves, I'm going to almost always put at least 3. I might occasionally put turrets far apart if they're all intended to be able to target the same spot. So like, this isn't a great example, but like let's say someone's walking, I know they're going to be walking right through this pathway here, so I could put this turret here and maybe like a turret over here, disregarding for the moment that this turret is going to be extremely visible to the enemy. But if we assume it's not visible, like I might put these isolated turrets in tiny little places that are sort of all one by themselves, but that all have a nice overlapping range where they can shoot people. And so like if you get here and you're getting shot by 3 turrets, it's going to take you quite a while to like take that one out and then find this one and take that one out and find this one and take that one out. And maybe I kill you by the time that happens. So I try to think of like where the turret ranges are overlapping, and if I can get them all overlapping into one one area where enemies are very likely to be, then that's usually an acceptable time, I think, to put a turret, like 1 turret off by itself somewhere. But lots of times I'll see a Symmetra and they just seem to be like randomly dispersing their turrets throughout the map, and I don't think that's a very effective strategy, at least not in my experience. So as I was saying, like right here, if these 3 turrets take a while to take them all out because you have to track all of them. Another thing that I really like to do on King's Row is, let's say we've been holding the gate, but like we're on defense, we've been holding the gate, and then the attackers get through. Like somebody flanks around through the alley, someone, I don't know, jumps over, a Pharah jumps over, and so we have to fight here now. And so one of the things that I really try to do when we get to that stage is to cut off one possible avenue of attack. And the one that I feel like I can most easily control as Symmetra is this hotel lobby. For those of you who aren't aware, it's a hotel lobby. See, Alderworth Hotel, Alderworth, and if we go in here, it is clearly a lobby. There's the elevator, check-in desk. But anyway, so I really like the hotel lobby for blocking off as Symmetra, and specifically I block it off this way. I want to put multiple turrets in here, but I want to get them as far away from one another as possible so that somebody needs to take as much time as necessary to take them out. Like if a Winston comes in here, like Winstons are great at taking out Symmetra turrets, but he can't take this one out and this one out at the same time. Granted, he'll still be pretty fast at it, but like if a McCree comes in here, like it'll take him forever to take these down, and usually I don't just do 2. I usually try to dedicate 4 to this room, and I put them in these 4 corners. And so that's really nice. And once I do that, I almost always get some kills in here. And what's even nicer about that is if the attacker team is communicating, then it really cuts this off as a path. They're like, oh, there's Symmetra turrets all over the hotel lobby. And so unless they have a Winston or a Diva or someone who's going to be a little bit more effective at taking them out quickly without dying, like McCree just can't walk in here with 4 turrets like this unless he's, supported or he's just like really on top of his game. So I think this principle of keeping your turrets spread out but with heavily overlapping ranges is sort of the principle that I use. So when this happens, I really keep a tight watch on what's happening with my lobby turrets. Just a second, I'm going to place 2 more turrets here to get those other ones out of the background because they're distracting me. So we'll be sitting here, we're fighting with guys, maybe they're coming up there or coming around back, or actually right here on the point. But I'll keep these 4 here, and as soon as one of them gets taken out, I just rush back and put another one in. Sometimes I can't go in here because maybe there's McCree who is in here because some of the turrets have been removed, and like I can't fight a McCree at close combat like that. So what I'll do then is I'll come out here and I'll place these turrets on top. And so usually they'll already be slightly injured from the turrets that were inside. They probably got this health, which probably didn't actually solve the problem. And then I can put as many turrets as I want out here to like catch them as they come out of these doors. And so this is sort of like a second step for blocking off the hotel. And so lots of times we'll start to lose this. We'll start to lose control of the hotel, and they'll start to be able to consider this a viable flanking route. And then I'll be able to do this, and like while they're coming out, maybe I place another one back up here in this corner. And so as they retreat, then they get gotten again. And so with this sort of 2-step plan, I'm often able to like regain control of this and cut it off to the attackers as like a viable path to taking over the point. So that's how I think about the hotel. Separately, if we have lost the gate, what I might do is try to cover this small health. And so I usually do that by putting turrets in here, and I put them on the inside like that because for the same reason I guess I talked about earlier, like as they're coming around, I don't want them to be able to see them. So they're coming around, hopefully they're low health, and they're like bam, and then they start getting damaged, and so then they have to sort of like shoot this while trying to get the health, which may or may not be available, and is a small health besides. So so sometimes you can get people who are like already in ill health with these 2. Like don't put it over here because then they'll see it as they come around the corner. You want to have it both on this side. Similarly, sometimes I'll put turrets along here. It's not great. I don't super love this, like putting turrets here. But this little wall can sometimes be helpful, especially if they're starting to come through this path, because then they can't see it until, again, they're right on top of it. And so if I can hide a couple behind that wall, of course, it's still visible pretty easily to someone coming around here, and they can usually be out of range of it and shoot it from a distance. So it's not like the greatest positioning, but sometimes I'll do that depending on like what the enemy team is doing. Like if I see them all coming in here and like maybe they're fighting with some of my teammates, I'll just like start frantically placing them here around this corner. So that helps. Along similar lines, I'll often place them here inside this little ledge so it's less visible. And I really encourage you when you're placing turrets as Symmetra to like walk the path of the attacker and say like, can I see this? Because sometimes you don't really realize how far out these stick, because they stick out pretty far. So like sometimes you place it and you're like, oh, it's not that visible, but then it like actually sticks out and it's actually completely visible. So anyway, it's really good to like verify that with your own eyes that that it's actually hidden. And so really commonly, if we're starting to lose the point, I'll try to like like maybe excuse me. Like maybe I've been walking back from spawn and like things are going to hell and the point's not looking good, then I'll like come over here and just like place a couple here and then place turrets right inside the hotel lobby to try to just cut this off. If I feel like things are too out of control on the point, I might only put 2 in here and try to focus on putting the rest of my turrets here around the point for protection. And just like on this diagonal wall is actually a pretty good place. I mean, if someone's being proactive, they can see them and take them out pretty easily, but it covers a lot of the point. And if you have enough like teammates that are defending the point, then like oftentimes they don't have a lot of focus to be like, oh, a turret is shooting me from over here. And so it just sort of adds support to an area where you already have a lot of people fighting. But if there aren't already a lot of people fighting there, it isn't as good. So let's see. That about covers what I normally do here. I usually don't bother putting turrets back here just because it isn't frequently used enough. I mean, sure, it's bad and it can be harmful if you get a lot of flankers back here, but I don't think you get them enough for it to, like, justify dedicating an entire turret to that area. It can be nice to use that turret for a warning by like putting a turret back there, like, oh, okay, my turret's going off. Everybody, someone's flanking us through the like behind the point. But I feel like it's just not optimal usage of a turret. I feel like you're wasting a lot of its potential there. So let's say you lose the point, and so you're walking back, and you know there are 5 guys in the point. As you peek your head around, and it's like, okay, well, we can't hold it anymore. So what are you gonna do then? What I generally do is I think of the path as a whole series of like pinch points that I can control with Symmetra turrets. And a lot of people will switch off Symmetra when you get to a payload. And I feel like when you're on defense and you're fighting a payload. And I feel like there's a good reason for that. Sometimes you, I think, do want to stop being Symmetra because, oh, I better keep moving or else this will kick me out of my custom game. Sometimes you do want to stop being Symmetra then because because maybe your team isn't able to like group up well enough to stop the payload. And Symmetra can still definitely be effective when the payload isn't stopped, but she's more effective when you and your team are like, okay, we're setting up shop right here. This is our place. Like, this far, no farther. So anyway, so I tend to see this as a series of pinch points, and then I also look for common flanking routes I can cut off. So usually as soon as we lose the point, I try to cover this region with turrets. These ones are not great. They're still kind of visible. Like, if you get here, you can see them, but they're better than nothing. Sometimes I'll put all 6 of them over here if I feel like I can't safely get over here to the right, but then like a Winston or a Diva can take them out in no time. So, I mean, it is a risk putting them all together. Another thing I'll do is if we aren't able to hold at this arch, is then I'll usually retreat to my sort of second stop, which is right here. People come in here for the small health, and you kill them before they can actually touch it. And putting 4 here is, I really like doing that a lot because they really can't see it until they're well inside. And usually it can kill them before they get to the health. So, so this really cuts off that as a flanking route for them and also prevents them from getting to the health, which can help your team sort of get control of this little corner here around the pub. Now, strategically, this isn't like the greatest place to hold, to try to like hold the enemy team because like there are 1,000 ways to flank you here. But having said that, I've been on teams many times where I feel like for some reason this seems like a really effective place to hold, and I'm not really sure why that happens because it doesn't really seem like it should. So maybe that's just me. I'm definitely not saying try to hold it here, but like you want to hold it everywhere. You want to hold it at all the places. Obviously you want to try to dedicate your Symmetra turrets and setting up infrastructure at places that are going to be more likely than most. But yeah, I guess that's it on that point. So similarly, I might also put turrets in here. This is a little bit riskier though because they don't really have far to walk to get to this big health, and so they don't get hit that much, and so oftentimes you can't kill them by the time they get to the large health. So this isn't as great to cut off as a flanking route. If we are holding here for a long time, sometimes, like if we have successfully like have a hold and we have a Reinhardt and we have a whole bunch of guys and they're all right here, sometimes what I'll do to prevent the attackers from flanking is put a couple turrets up here to like just sort of give us an added bonus, a warning that they're coming through, and sort of try to weaken them before they attack our little like choke that we're holding down here. So let's see, what else? Also the back of the sign is good, but sometimes they're a little bit visible. But so what I'll often do, a lot of times we'll get the payload stopped right around here. And so we'll sort of hold this point, and you can actually put a lot of really good turrets placed here that aren't overly visible until you're on top of them. And so I'll sometimes put a few here, maybe on the sign or like right over here behind this little ledge. And so I might set up something like this with the payload right in this area, and it's surprisingly effective. It gets people who are coming up over this alley, although they can usually see that one and take it out pretty quickly, but it sort of prevents people from getting in here too easily. It helps a little bit. it helps if people are flanking behind. It can stop them depending on where exactly the payload is, but it definitely helps. And I've had a number of successful games where we held the payload here for a long, long time, if not the full rest of the match, with just turrets on like this building. So so another thing you can do is cut off this small health if you start to get things pushed a little bit forward. But again, that's an area that I don't think is used commonly enough for it to really be worth turret placement. So let's say we lose this. We're backing up. Another place I like to hold, and have held successfully with turrets, is right here on this corner. Especially with all this like gear and pipes and stuff, you can really hide your turrets behind it pretty effectively. Just behind all these little nooks and crannies, and then someone comes around the wall, and then it just like blasts them with several turrets all at once. Ideally, you want all your turrets to see the enemy at one instant, so that they have less time to react to them. Because if like one shoots them and then they shoot that, and then they walk forward and another one shoots them and they shoot that, then like lots of times they can survive. As soon as they see the first one, they're on guard. They could be like, oh, where is it? Oh, it's over there, and then they can shoot it in time. So so you really want to try to place them so that as many turrets as possible can see their target like in as short a time period as possible. So I've held them there with that. I've also successfully held them here if the payload's stuck in this area. I find this to be pretty effective. And like, it's not great because they can still see them, but sometimes it works if you're just on the verge of being able to hold the point. So I like that spot as sort of a backup, but I don't really have a lot of confidence in it. Usually if you are needing to use that spot, you're either definitely going to win and it's not going to make much difference, or like you're definitely going to lose this spot in just a second. So I feel like it rarely actually turns the tide there. So let's say they get the checkpoint and we're retreating back here. One thing I like to do is, if we can hold them here, I find it's not very common to hold payloads in right like just past the checkpoint. It's like if they get the checkpoint, we're all so demoralized, they almost always get it like down to this corner. But if they get to this checkpoint, a lot of times I'll try to do what I've said before, which is cut off a flanking route. By putting turrets right around here. Obviously they can still flank from up here if it's like a Pharah or a Diva or something, but you can usually like keep a few people out this way, and you can just kind of set those up and leave, because like it's a pretty dangerous place as Symmetra to hang around here because you're super visible and exposed. Like you can use your shield of course to escape from here, but I just don't think it's a very good place to like hang out for a sustained period. So usually, unless we're holding the payload right up here, I usually just set these up and like set it and forget it, and then I'm off to better and broader horizons. In this region, again, this pipe is pretty good. I've hidden a lot of turrets behind this pipe, and I usually like to put a couple up here, because then when a Pharah comes through, they get killed by these and they have no idea they're there. And so like this is a really great place if you have a super annoying flanking Pharah to leave these here. It doesn't help you so much with the Diva. It occasionally helps you with the Widow, where they like are planning to jump through and then jump up here. But like that takes a lot of time for them to wait for their grapple to cool down, so it doesn't happen too often. But like very frequently, a Pharah will come through and we're holding the payload like right in this region, and she's like, "Hey, a bunch of guys, I'm gonna ult them," and then she starts ulting, and then my turrets take her out because she didn't like check out the area first. She just went through and stopped like right here and ulted, and then she's dead, and it's great. So this is a really good spot if you're holding in this region. Another thing that you can do is, if you're holding this region, a lot of times I'll come around here and try to cut off this flanking route. Now, I mean, it's better if you're holding up here and you can cut off this flanking route, but usually once they've sort of gotten control of this corner, you can't really get up there. You can't touch that again. They're just going to have that flanking route. So what I'll often do is set up 2 or 3 turrets, like right here under the window, and then put the other 3 in this health room to cut this off, both as a flanking route and as access to the large health. And I actually am surprised, because you would think, like from what I said with the pub before, that they'd be able to come in here and get the large health, but I actually get lots of kills from this spot. I usually put them, I take care that they're not visible from outside, and I put them a little bit far away from one another on this wall so that they can't take them out all at once. And I'm very frequently surprised at how many kills I get. I would really expect them to be able to like get to this health and or take these out in time. But something about this placement has been very effective for me. So oftentimes if we're holding the payload in this region, I'll have like 3 there and 3 here. And then sometimes I just like control this room for like minutes. and no, and like every once in a while, you know, I hear that one of these is out, and so I go back in and I put it back right away because that's my job as Symmetra. But I'm really surprised at how effective this can be. And also just like on this wall, like this one's a little bit visible here, but like if you put it on this wall, it's often very effective. So let's see. I don't usually bother with this area. It's just not, they're just not commonly enough traversed. If we're holding the payload right in here, I'll often again try to do sort of a last ditch cutoff of this flank by putting turrets above this door. It's not the greatest. Usually if you're in a situation where you need this, it doesn't really help because most of the people coming out of this door are at full health because of this health pack. So that's not really great. But it helps, especially if the payload's right here and they have to hang out in this region. Like, it doesn't do them any good to be right here at full health. They have to be out here. And so having these turrets, having a bunch of turrets here on this wall can be pretty effective, but it's usually less so. So on occasion too, I've put turrets here to get like a Pharah who's gonna flank through that window, but like it's really hard. It's a little bit dangerous to be over here if there's like a Lucio floating around or you're afraid of getting booped. You can't really get too close to the window, so I don't really think it's that good. And so then on occasion too, I'll put turrets here, like if it's one of those last ditch, you know, 1 meter remaining until they win the game. Sometimes I'll cover this area when we're all like frantically fighting and trying to get out to the payload, just touch it to keep it from moving. And so sometimes I'll do something like this, and that'll often help because when it's just like crazy chaos going on, they're usually not like, I wonder if there's a turret around the corner. And so this is another place where it can just sort of like add to the chaos, and you just get that free damage that they aren't being nearly as proactive about like seeking out and avoiding. So I guess that is about it. Let me go over to my wrap-up screen. I'm gonna get kicked out of this game in a second anyway. If you guys aren't familiar with me, if this is your first video you've watched, I do a lot of streaming. I stream 3 times a week, and I'm Sarahwatch. You can find out when I'm streaming if you want to follow me on Twitter. I'm Overwatch Sarah. Oh yes, and one other thing I forgot. I'm going to answer user questions at the ends of videos. I have had a lot of questions from users in my Discord, which is in the lower right-hand corner. You can see discord.sarahwatch.tv. Excuse me, it's also in the video description. But I have some questions, and so I'm going to answer one before the video ends. Let's see. Shabaza says, I noticed you were using many names for spots on the map to make callouts, like X's in the arcade, X's in the hotel. Where do you have those names from? Some of them are not that obvious. Is there a community official guide for that, or did you roam all maps in a custom game to figure out what the different buildings are? So the answer to that is I have, oh, there's the sound of me getting kicked out of my game. So the answer to that is I have made some call-out videos. I'm planning to make more call-out videos. And so there isn't like an official guide, which is a little bit frustrating. I think it sort of results in like a splintering of the vocabulary that people use for talking about locations. In general, the principles that I use when I talk about locations are that I try to come up with names that are ideally descriptive enough that if someone is trying to understand it, after a second they can figure it out. That's not always true, and sometimes I'm not able to come up with names that are intuitive enough to really work in that context. But a lot of times if I'm playing like solo queue, so obviously the odds are pretty low that any 5 people I'm playing with know exactly the callouts that I'm using. What I'll try to do there is I'll try to say the name that I'm referring to and then add an additional description. Like on, let's see, like I'll say something like so-and-so is on top of the red building. Like red building's obviously pretty intuitive, but if they don't know where the red building is, I can say like so-and-so is on top of the red building above the payload to the left. And then that gives them like these extra factors that they can use. And so I try to do that. I don't always. If I'm playing with a bunch of people that I know well, people that I play with frequently, that we like talk about the callouts all the time, then I'll often just say like on top of the red building, and I know that they know where that is. So that's what I do there. A lot of people have come up with different callouts, but I'm planning to make more callout videos, so hopefully that will at least help me, because, and the people that I play with, and then I guess anyone else who wants to watch them, it could help them too, but with the people they play with, but it's kind of a crapshoot whether it works, and I mean, I try to make the names as intuitive as possible. But like if you have to memorize the names, like that's stupid. There's no point in doing that. It's just a big waste of everybody's time. You should try to come up with names that like help people understand them. Um, anyway, so let's see. Thank you to all my Patreon supporters who support me, support this video, support all of my streaming. I appreciate all you guys, and Will, my newest Patreon supporter, who just signed or just pledged yesterday. If you guys want to talk with other people who like talking about Overwatch and are just nice people, we have a Discord server, as I mentioned, down here in the lower right. So anyone is welcome, unless you're a dick. If you're a dick, you're not welcome. But everybody else is. And so you guys should come and join us. So I think that's about it. I might put some links up here to videos that about playing Mercy and playing Symmetra. I have some other videos that that are helpful for people. So I'll probably put some links up there. But thanks you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.